All right, well, no time like the present for us to begin. So, welcome all. My name is Emma Howitt, and I'm the Shalom Austin Jewish Family Service Clinical Director. And I'm joined by
Lee. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and one of the therapists with Jewish Family Service.
And today we are going to be discussing COVID-19 and your new workplace. So we will dive in and discuss what we're going to focus on today. So, since that pesky pandemic started, our lives have really changed dramatically. And for some of us, home and work life has been entangled. And many people are really balancing all the roles that come along with that. That might be parent, it might be teacher. You might have taken on, unexpected or changed job duties. And other people have seen their actual physical workplace transform and have had some threats to financial security.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to break that down into a few things today, exploring the impact that COVID-19 is really having on our lives, increasing the understanding of establishing as best we can that work-life balance, and then also figuring out what are our own self-care practices that we can use in everyday life to support that.
So let's talk about how work has changed since the pandemic. So we have some local statistics to share. A recent survey of residents in 6 counties. And the survey was done by the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority. They covered 6 counties: Bastrop, Burnett, Caldwell, Hayes, Travis, and Williamson. So this survey found that 81% of Central Texans said that they were now working from home at least some of the time. And that's compared with the pre-pandemic level of 54%. So we've really seen a huge increase in these folks who are working from home. And they also found in this survey that 65% of people surveyed think they'll work from home at least some of the time after the coronavirus pandemic. And so this is really becoming part of our norm, the work from home experience. And, whether you're working from home or you have returned to work or you are working in person, today's discussion is really focused on how your workplace has changed and what you can do to establish some balance in that experience. And that can mean, your workplace can mean any number of things. You might be a stay-at-home parent, and that's certainly work. You might be a caretaker, a student. You might work in a retail or in an office. You might be self-employed. And so we really want to consider that, this pandemic has changed work in every sense of the word. We are really seeing, in this statistical trends that most people are working at home. And this is really a big adjustment for those people who went to work in person previously. And, for a lot of us, that was our norm. We went out, we left our home to go to work. And so, part of what we're going to do today is remind you that you're at home working. You're not just working from home. You're not just doing your job. You're doing it in a way you've never done it before. And even if you're working in person, that looks very different too. If you're working in person, likely you are wearing a mask, you're wearing a PPE and gloves for long periods of your day. Your routine has probably changed in the workplace. You might be cleaning as part of your role when that wasn't really a responsibility you had in the past. So we really want to validate that things are different regardless of the way that your work is happening these days. And so, more changes have come from this experiences, and particularly for those of you with families. and the entanglement of family and home life. Your home now holds so many different purposes and roles. It used to be a place for family time primarily, but now it might be a place of education. Your children, whether they're young kids or sometimes adult children who are learning remotely at college, for example, while you work from home. And there's a chance that you're the student working from home. And so all of this really changes the atmosphere and the experience of your home. Your home now serves as that school and an office alongside its regular role as your household. And this might also mean you have a lot of switching roles and a lot of quick transitions. You might be jumping from the responsibilities of your household to helping your children or your siblings with learning, to being a worker and trying to get your everyday work tasks completed. And so all of that switching roles from worker to family member can be really tough. It's a quick thing to go from being in your office to walking out of the door, wherever your home office might be, and become a parent or become a partner. And it's a lot to take on all at once. And so something, we'll talk about is creating some space, even just building in some transition time to help understand that, you used to have a commute where you were able to get in your car and drive from your home, from your office to your home or your home to your office. And that experience is no longer there. And so it's really important to create a sense of commuting in your everyday life, even though you might be walking a few steps as part of your commute. But really that allows you to get a little bit of a mental break in that experience.
And also with change inevitably comes loss, for good or for bad. With change comes loss. And I think it's important to recontextualize what loss looks like in this new setting when we specify with work. And loss looks like a lot of different things for different people. There are changes, right? Losses change. There are changes to schedules and routines. Even taking time at the end of your day to clean your own office or common workspaces if you're at home, but seeing people in person, customers or coworkers, reduced hours, furloughs and layoffs. That's a huge loss, financial security, but also looking at changes in responsibilities or changing how you're working with people, new skills that you're having to develop, new positions that you're kind of having to jump into. And essentially it's all of the above. Things have changed. And so for people, it's all of the above. But that's a lot to experience all at once while you have family role changing as well. And each loss we experience needs and deserves time to be not just acknowledged, but to be felt, to be processed. Ignoring it doesn't just make it go away. Anyone who's been around a 4-year-old knows that if they want something, they're just going to tag. The same thing happens with those uncomfortable feelings. They're going to keep bugging you until you take some time to sit with them. So when we talk about grief, the stages of grief, denial, anger, sadness, bargaining, and then acceptance. But something that's complicating right now is with all of these different losses we have, they may be at different stages in the mourning process. So while you are in acceptance that you are working from home now, but maybe you are still angry about the changes in the hours that you had or the schedule, and you're also really sad that you don't see your coworkers and have that same connection with them. So all of them are coming along in different ways, which can be really disorienting at times. And one of the biggest losses that we have is the loss of certainty, and that is anticipatory grief. It's the whole feeling of waiting for the other shoe to drop, not knowing what's next. And with this comes a lot of fear. When you see sadness coming up or anger coming up, it's really coming from a fear base. And the more things change, the more that we feel those things, it's even increasingly important to focus on engaging in these new safety protocols for work-life balance that we're trying to create here.
Absolutely. And I think just the acknowledgement for ourselves that we have that loss allows us to take some action, allows us to take care of ourselves, knowing that we have some grief around all of this change. Mm-hmm. And, you've likely changed a lot of habits. For most of us at the very beginning, I know that I was washing my hands more frequently than I have in the past. I was wiping down my groceries. It was certainly something I hadn't done before, but it was what was recommended at that time. And so that's what we did. You've probably also changed habits like wearing masks on a regular basis in public spaces and physical distancing. Really we've taken those steps to adapt and to make sure we're protecting our physical health and the physical health of those around us. How can we adapt to address our mental health and understand that taking care of ourselves or self-care is really a discipline and not necessarily just the indulgence side that we often hear about, but really spending that time investigating what we need, what our needs are. And so a big part of that is understanding healthy boundaries. And, humans crave structure. For most of us, we kind of joked over the summer about Blur's Day. What day is it? And this circumstance really created a loss of our natural boundaries around the days, around the weeks, and around the natural boundaries of work at home. And so it is really important to understand how boundaries can set us up for success. Working from home might offer us increased flexibility, but is that always good? Again, you aren't working from home, you're at home working during a global health crisis. And so it's not the same as it would have been under normal circumstances. And so working in person might have decreased your flexibility. And so it is important to adapt and to understand what your needs are. And so starting with yourself really allows that space for healthy boundaries. What is my 100% today? And understanding for ourselves that every day is going to be a little bit different. Your best looks different every day. And you might you might decide to make some changes to help establish a better workflow and a better set of structure for yourself, given the lack of structure that working from home or working under these circumstances might create. And so just some, basic suggestions.
Emma, you froze up for me. I'm not sure if you froze up for anyone else. All right, we're doing a little tech moment here. I'm just going to take a moment, right? This is also becoming part of our normal at times. I think we've all had that time where we come into a meeting and we start talking, but we're on mute. I think we've all had that moment before. This is just part of our reality now as well, no matter who we are. This is a part of our new reality, and providing some kindness for ourselves and others around that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, this is part of the experience, and I give myself permission to lower my expectations around technology and how things may not and usually don't go perfectly.
I'm going to challenge that and say reset expectations.
I like that. Yes, reset the expectation. It gives you a better understanding of what you're capable of and what is possible. Wonderful. So where did I freeze up? Help me out, Lee.
You were talking about what's my 100% today. What does that look like? Having some compassion for yourselves, but hadn't gotten to okay, post work with colleagues, lunch breaks, little simple things.
Yes. So thank you. Establishing those boundaries and helping your colleagues and your people who you work with understand when you're available and when you may not be. And that might change day to day. And so as much as you can, really communicating to those people on your team, for example, when you're going to be available, and using your calendar as a tool, for example. Making sure that you put in when you're taking a lunch break, or scheduling time for specific tasks that you need to get done. It allows you to block that time for yourself and let others know that there's a priority in that meeting time, for example. Give yourself permission to reschedule a meeting if it's not urgent, or if you need a break. All of us have experienced Zoom fatigue. And so it is important to recognize that you might want to do a phone call instead. You might need to take a video break in some of your meetings. You might just need time away from the blue light in your computer screen. And so really just understanding what your needs on any given moment and any given day can allow you to really set up those boundaries in a specific and in a kind way, ultimately, to yourself. I think it helps us in this highly technological period of time to remember that instant messages don't always need instant responses. It become an obligation to immediately jump on Teams or Slack or whatever messaging service you use and immediately respond when, if you don't have the answer now, then you don't have it to give. And it's okay to step away and say, I'll get back to you. And really at the end of your day, clocking out. Even if it's not a requirement for your workplace, you might want to have a mental punch card that really indicates to yourself that you're done, and setting that boundary at the end of your day. And just a note to supervisors, remember that your team needs understanding. And really you can embed a culture of self-care in order to lead by example, and really ensure that the people who work for you have an understanding of how important it is for you to take care of yourself, and it sets them up to try to achieve the same thing. And ultimately, parents, this applies to you too. If you spend time establishing boundaries for yourself and taking care of your needs, then your children will learn those skills as well. And so it really sets everyone up for that level of success where I know what I need and I can communicate that clearly.
Also, a big part of boundaries is keep your work at work, keep your home at home. And this is physically and mentally. Sometimes we can physically move away from the space. If you're working in person, you can physically leave a space. But if you're working from home, You might be working at your kitchen table. That might be your new office. So there are a lot of different ways to help our brains ultimately understand the difference. And that's through some mental tricks you can do, also some physical distancing. But ultimately, consistently, if we can train our brains and help our brains understand this, and our brains are very good at learning patterns, I will say, they're very good at this. So I think a big part of it is kind of maintaining practices as much as you can with what it looks like. So, you know, Emma mentioned your commute time. If you're on a commute on your way to work, even now though, because things have a different level of stress or hypervigilance perhaps, even if you can just switch off the news that you maybe listen to and have your after work playlist, or just songs that you love that just like get you in the mood for having a good rest of the day, listening to a podcast that you really like. And similarly, if you are working from home, you can still have a commute. It's just gonna look different. If you're able to go sit and listen to a podcast, lay down for a few minutes, do a meditation, or even going out and taking a drive around the block. I know plenty of people who do this on and off to help with that switch in their brain between work and home. And it may feel silly at times, but get in your car, drive around the block, come back in, and now I'm at work. So little things like that. And I think even, especially with working home, it can be particularly difficult at times. But things like using your travel mug at home, even though you have mugs, you have glasses at home, but still using your water bottle or you know, your coffee tea mug that you took to work. Little shifts in our brain can make a huge difference. And then also with creating physical distance, if you can get as much physical distance from work as possible, that is awesome. So, you know, hitting your punch card at work, whatever it may be, once that is out, okay. So sometimes you can create physical distance. Sometimes it's not as much of a distance as you would like. You'd like a little more commute time in your car. But even when you're home, if you can close a door, close a door. If that's not available to you, if you can take your computer, your papers, your pen, you can take it and stick it in a drawer somewhere, in a bookshelf, somewhere it's not in an immediate view. That can be really helpful. And then, like I said, if you're working from home at the kitchen table, that happens. But even something as simple as, this is my kitchen table, but when I turn it this way, then that's work mode. And then the physical act of putting the computer away, putting your stuff away, and then turning it the other direction again, and little things like that. And it seems like these little things, but they can make a huge difference in the way that we work. A big part of it is also how we use time and for what activities. So before, maybe when you were at work, you would go out for lunch with a coworker, you'd go get a sandwich or something. At that point in time, you are not in front of your computer screen. Or when you take a break or go out to your car for something, you're not in front of your computer screen. So can you close it and actually take a break, right? Because we see those messages or those emails and we get that like, oh, I have to answer it now. Or what did they say? Well, it can wait 15 minutes while you have a sandwich. So you can just close that computer, walk into a different room, take a walk around, go downstairs and upstairs, whatever it can do to kind of create some physical and mental distance can do a whole lot of different things in combination. But actually taking breaks from work, actually shutting the computer throughout the day. And same thing if you're working in person, it's really easy to get wrapped up in this. And when our stress level is higher, and even though you may be thinking, I've been doing this for 6 months, well, we're still in a global health crisis. So it's still stressful, even though you might be adjusting. But even then, when you're in person, checking email or taking a little break, it might seem like this gut reaction to do it, to not do it. But taking a moment to take for yourself to recharge a little bit, take a few deep breaths is incredible. And then really separating what you do from work and what you do at home. Of course, when we're at work, we think of our home lives sometimes, or when we're at home, we think of our work sometimes. But if we can add a little mental distance there. So home activities that you have, maybe you play with your dog, you like cooking, you're baking, what are some of your other hobbies? Really engage and make that a time. Post-work hours, if you can clock it at 5, your hours may have shifted, but once you can kind of clock out, really engage in those activities. And then the power of wearing shoes. It seems like a silly thing, but I was told at the beginning of this, like, oh, wear shoes every day. Well, I'm gonna wear shoes every day working from home. But on the day that I didn't, I realized what a difference it made. But when you think about it, the clothing we wear really, it completely goes with the activity that we're doing. You're going to work out, you're going to the gym, you're going for a run, you put on workout clothes for that. You put on a particular set of clothing for that. You're getting ready to go to bed and relax, you put on different clothes for that. And so why would work be any different? Of course, with your mask and some of the safety procedures at your place of work in person, it might be a little different, but that's still a specific set of clothing. And it just makes me think of Mr. Rogers a little bit. He comes in and you take it off, you put on your cardigan, he switches his shoes, and thinking about it, that's even like a little tip off from a young age watching that, hey, when we're coming in to have this personal space together and to learn, to talk, and to have fun, time away from work where we can be fun and silly, imaginative, what happens before that? You change your shoes. So I really encourage you, although it may be tempting working at home to wear your running shorts to work at times, put on real pants, put on real shoes. If your work before you were barefoot, then I understand, but generally speaking, at home or at work, we wear shoes. So it's silly, but the power of wearing shoes is one to really believe in.
Absolutely. And if we can only be a little bit more like Mr. Rogers.
Oh, so true.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about spheres of control. And so you can see from this diagram that there are different spheres. So that inner sphere in the very center in the white is our sphere of control. That is where we have direct responsibility. So my thoughts, my words, my actions and behaviors, my decisions and choices, these are all my direct responsibility and things that I have control over. In that second blue sphere, we see our sphere of influence. So these are things that impact me personally. So where I work, who I vote for, well, everyone's gone out to vote, and if not, we have a few more days. Let's see, my reputation, other people's actions. These are things that influence or that fall into our sphere of influence, but they may not be things that we always have direct control over. And it impacts us pretty personally in this realm. And our last sphere on the outside in the gray is our sphere of concern. But it is not a sphere where we have much control. So we don't have control over traffic. I think all of us who live in Austin, even during these times, know that that is true. We don't have control if the public transportation's on time. We certainly don't have control of the weather, as today has showed us. We don't have control over how much stock a retailer has. That's something we all experienced early on with missing out on toilet paper and hand sanitizer in this pandemic. And so this really allows us to look at where we can focus our energies. and allow us to have use our energy where it counts. Taking back that control where it's possible can really have a larger effect on us and our experience. The more we focus on what's in our control, the more effective we feel. So think about times when you have felt frustrated about a challenge at work or a disagreement with a partner, and you might go and do all the dishes. You might vacuum all the bedrooms. You might do a little laundry. And oftentimes that makes us feel a little better because it's something that we have power over. And it allows us to take control over something and start a task and finish a task that we know that we can do. It gives us a little bit of confidence back. And sometimes it's a little meditative to just take that time and space to focus on something that we have power over. We ultimately can gain some more happiness from that experience, because the more we're able to tackle what's within our sphere of influence, within our sphere of control, it allows us to take on those things in our sphere of influence with the understanding that we can influence them, but we ultimately cannot control the outcome. And the things that we can't change drain us. But we do have control over how we respond to them. And so that, again, allows us to look back at ourselves and say, what can I do under these circumstances? What do I have power over? And, if I'm angry about something that's outside of my power, how can I change my reaction? How can I take care of myself better and understand the circumstance better for myself? And so just understanding that, our sphere of control is quite small ultimately. For some people that might be stressful to admit, but it can also be freeing. It allows us to really let go of the things that are outside of that sphere.
That also just made me think that, we don't, as you were mentioning messages, ping, 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 we don't have control over that, but after our punch card, we do have control over taking an app off of our phone or putting it on do not disturb so we won't get those things, right? That is something that we can control as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, all of us have, app notification settings that we can change for the weekend, for example, or for the evenings. Take control of what you can so that you can make that separation between work and home life. And so we also wanted to touch on some coping skills, and all of what we've talked about today has been related to coping. It's about adapting and understanding, what we can do to take care of ourselves. And these are really important to cultivate and to practice. All of us had some pre-existing challenge or concern or problem before the pandemic, and now it's just compounded by the pandemic. And so just having that understanding that we might need a little extra care for ourselves, or we might need to remind ourselves to take time away. Many of us lost vacation plans that we had for this year. And so it's hard to motivate ourselves to take time off because where are we going to go with that? And that can be difficult to sort of perceive that it's vacation when we don't get to actually be somewhere all that different. And really the idea is you need some space from your work. A lot of research backs up that workers do better when they have vacation. And even if it's a staycation, it allows you to draw a line and say, for these couple of days, I am, not communicating on my work platforms. I'm stepping away from my laptop, and I'm giving myself time to do the things I want to do. And so, I'm encouraging you now, take your time off in whatever way that looks. and understand that you can make the break that you might need very desperately this year. And even that might go for a day-to-day examples of taking time away. As Lee mentioned, closing your laptop during your lunch break can be a great example of taking time away, because under normal circumstances, you might have walked away. You might have gone out, like you said, with a coworker to lunch. And so giving yourself that same break from the responsibilities of your work. And then, of course, use the people around you and in your circles as a resource. Have a positive impact of reaching out and being reached out to, feeling the connection that you have, even if you may not feel it in the same way you used to. You might not be jumping in the car to go to happy hour with friends after work, or even coworkers, but you can jump on Zoom or FaceTime and do happy hours that way. You can connect through trivia. A lot of people are doing book clubs these days. And so really making the time to connect with the people that are important to you, and making space for those relationships allows for a two-way street of resource connection and caring for each other. And then, of course, we encourage you to give yourself some compassion. It is so important to remember that these are not typical times. Every day you have to run an errand or go to the grocery store, you're reminded that these are not normal times. And so it is important to give yourself that compassion on a day-to-day basis. Be kind. This is a hard challenge that we're all faced with as a human race. And so if we can give ourselves a break, it allows us to feel a little bit less of the overwhelm and the stress that's come as a result of all of this. And so I wanted to pass on a quick in the moment kind of skill that you can try on a day-to-day basis. So this skill with the acronym STOP is a mindfulness practice. And mindfulness is the basic human ability to be fully present, aware of where we are and what we're doing, and not overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around us. And it's really a wonderful thing because it's available to us in every moment. So whether you take on the task of meditating, if you take a moment to do body scans, or even just mindful moment practices like the one I'll teach you in a moment, it really gives you the space to pause and breathe, and not necessarily rush into the next thing that you need to do. Or you might even notice in the middle of your task that you're feeling overwhelmed. And so stepping back and really taking the moment to connect allows you to figure out where you go. So STOP is an acronym. So I'm going to walk you through what each of those letters means. And the first one is S. So S is, you can either call S stand up. For some people, it's helpful to sort of change the position our body's in. But if that's not comfortable for you, you can also just use S for stop, stop and breathe. And so it's either stand up or stop and breathe, and feel your connection to your breath. And so it takes a second to consciously breathe in and allow that exhale to come. And so it allows us to just slow down, and that's the first step, is just taking that pause and noticing and realizing that we're always breathing, but that we might need a moment to just connect to that experience. And the T stands for tune into your body. So take a moment to lower your gaze, scan your body, notice physical sensations, notice emotions, You might feel a tightness in your chest. You might feel warmth. You might feel anxious. Calling out all of those experiences allows you to figure out where you go with them. And you can continue to take that deep breath. On your inhale, you can notice any pleasant experiences or emotions or sensations and let them fill you up. And then as you exhale, letting go of any of the unpleasant sensations or feelings and letting some of that stress just melt away. And ultimately, we move to O, which is observe. So just observing your surroundings, observing your body and the space that you're in. Giving yourself a moment to observe something in your environment that's beautiful or pleasant or something you're grateful for, and just taking a moment to acknowledge that. And then our P is for possibility. So from here, you ask yourself, what is possible? What is new? What is a forward step? And it allows you to investigate and move forward with some kindness toward yourself, because you have this understanding of the state you're in and where you want to be. And if you find yourself continually feeling reactive, you might try to pause and take a couple of deep breaths and use some phrases and some statements to help calm yourself. So you might say, step back. And you don't have to physically step back, but sometimes our brain needs a little signal. Step back. You might say, clear head. And so recognizing that our head gets filled and cluttered with all of the anxiety and the worry and the uncertainty. And so just giving ourselves the space to say, clear head, calm body. And so pulling our shoulders back and just bringing some calm. And then you might finish by saying relax or ease, and just allow yourself to be in that moment before you move on to the next one. And so just practicing that little exercise on a couple of times a week can bring a really strong awareness to what you're going through on a day-to-day basis. And again, that gives you a lot of great info on how to set your boundaries and how to communicate them clearly and kindly to the people who need to hear them. And just being clear with yourself and honest with yourself about what it's like to be at work, whether you're at work in person or working at home, to be at work during a global health crisis. Lee, was there anything else you wanted to add on that piece?
It just reminded me of something that I like to share with clients, that you are having a normal response to an abnormal experience. Right now, this is not a normal thing you're experiencing. This is not anything you could have imagined or prepared for fully. And so when you are having that moment and you say, okay, step back, that's a very healthy to do when you're having a normal response to everything that's happening. And it all goes with setting those realistic expectations for yourself and having some compassion for yourself.
Absolutely.
We also wanted to share with you some of the other things that we have to offer the community and ways that we can serve you. If you didn't know, so Jewish Family Service, we have resources, and it's not just for the Jewish community, it's the community at large that we're working with. We have therapeutic services. We take most insurance companies, which is awesome, and have a sliding scale option. But we also have free support groups, a food pantry, emergency financial assistance. We do a lot of outreach with older adults, which is a lot of fun. And we invite volunteers to join in. There are a lot of different ways to support us as we support the community. But we also, this being an educational component, we are also able to offer education and training on a number of things, and we're happy to help out any of you in the communities that you're a part of with that. We were just talking about mindfulness, and I have 2 mindfulness practices I do each week. So we have Mindfulness Mondays at noon, which is a little longer, maybe up to 15 minutes for adults. But then grab your kiddos or someone younger on Wednesdays at 4 for Here and Now. And I encourage any adult with them, or even if you are an adult, to join in. It's a little shorter, and with the mindfulness practices, mindfulness, meditation, skills, breath work, we do a lot of things, and those are free on the Shalom Austin Facebook page, closed captioning, and you can watch the videos anytime. And then we also have a couple more webinars within our fall series. So coming up in not too long, we'll have Breaking Out of Isolation, and then I'll be doing one specifically just about mental health, redefining normal, and a lot of that self-care practices that we can bring to our lives.
And so if you're interested in any of those upcoming webinars or any of these services at all, please email us at jfs@shalomaustin.org, and we'd be happy to help you out and put you in the right direction. All right, so we wanted to move into Q&A.
And I was telling Emma about this just the other day. When I think of Q&A, I always like to think of it as question answer, question and response, question and it depends. There's no one perfect answer for everyone, but definitely some time to get some ideas or some guidance in some different directions.
And please feel free to use the chat to ask any questions that you might have, and we'll do our best to give you some answer, or at least some guidance on how to get it. I don't see any questions coming through on the chat yet. Well, hopefully we were able to give you a lot of helpful, useful information to take with you. It's really something that we try to encourage, that overall wellness. And it's an easy thing to leave behind our work-life balance when the boundaries just get dropped in that experience. And so I really hope that all of you who attended with us today got a lot out of this. And please feel free to reach out to us in the future if you have any questions or needs. We look forward to hearing from you. Great. Well, all right for now. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody.